The emergency council chamber aboard the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Wisdom hummed with tension as 12 different alien species gathered around the circular debate platform. Each representative maintained their species' traditional posture of formal discourse, though the gravity of their situation made even the most diplomatic among them visibly agitated. At the center of their heated discussion lay what appeared to be a human corpse, suspended in a containment field that cast an eerie blue glow across the chamber. The body belonged to Captain Sarah Chen, formerly of the Earth Defense Corps vessel Defiance. Her ship had been destroyed 3 days ago during what was supposed to be humanity's first peaceful contact with the Galactic Confederation. Ambassador Thexla of the Zephyrians, a tall, crystalline being whose faceted skin reflected the chamber's lights in prismatic patterns, gestured toward the body with one of his forearms. "The question before us remains unchanged." His voice resonated through the translation matrix that allowed all species present to understand each other. "What do we do with this specimen?" Council member Vorth, representing the insectoid Chitaran collective, clicked his mandibles in agitation. "The human's vessel fired upon our diplomatic envoy without provocation. This one was clearly the aggressor. Standard protocol demands we return the remains to their species as a gesture of, what do they call it? Good faith." Good faith, the voice belonged to Admiral Kess of the Draconian Empire, her scaled features twisted in contempt. "These humans have proven themselves violent and unpredictable. First contact protocols exist for a reason. When a species demonstrates hostility during peaceful overtures, they forfeit their right to diplomatic courtesy." The floating, jellyfish-like representative of the ethereal collective, known only as Harmonizer 7, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as it spoke in its melodic whale song language. The translator rendered its words in standard galactic. "The ethical implications of this decision extend far beyond simple protocol. We are speaking of desecrating the dead, regardless of their species' perceived failings." Dr. Nexter, the senior xenobiologist from the Vegan Science Coalition, had been quietly examining the readings from the containment field scanners. His gray, elongated skull bore the distinctive cranial ridges of his people, and his large, dark eyes reflected a keen intelligence. "If I may interrupt," he said, his voice carrying the measured tone of academia, "there are several anomalies in the human's biological readings that warrant discussion." The chamber fell silent. As the Confederation's leading expert on exotic biology, Dr. Nexter's opinions carried significant weight in matters involving unknown species. "What sort of anomalies?" asked Thexla, his crystalline form shifting to focus more attention on the scientist. "The human's cellular decay rate is far below what we would expect from a being dead for 3 standard days," Dr. Nexter explained, approaching the containment field with a handheld scanner. "Additionally, there are trace electrical impulses still firing throughout the neural pathways, and the body temperature has only dropped by 12 degrees rather than the expected complete equilibration with environmental temperature." Admiral Kess's reptilian features curled into what might have been a sneer. "Are you suggesting this primitive creature is somehow still alive?" "I'm suggesting we don't fully understand human biology," Dr. Nexter replied calmly. "According to our initial scans during the first contact incident, this species shows remarkable resilience to trauma that would be fatal to most galactic races. However, our xenobiology database on humans consists of exactly 17 minutes of scanning data from their destroyed vessel." The arachnid representative of the Web Syndicate, Spinner Zalthes, spoke for the first time, her 8 legs repositioning her on the specialized platform designed for her species. "Perhaps the question is not what to do with the corpse, but whether we have accurately determined that it is, in fact, a corpse." This statement caused an immediate uproar. Several council members began speaking at once, their various languages creating a cacophony that the translation matrix struggled to parse. The chittering of the Chitaran, the harmonic resonances of the ethereals, and the guttural rumbles of the Draconians created a symphony of confusion. "Order, order," Thexla's voice cut through the noise, enhanced by the authority protocols in his vocal modulator. "We will address this systematically. Dr. Nexter, in your professional opinion, is there any possibility this human is not deceased?" The scientist's large eyes studied the readouts on his scanner carefully. "Based on what we know of human physiology, which admittedly is limited, I would classify the subject's state as indeterminate. The biological processes we're observing are inconsistent with death, as we understand it across the known species of the galaxy. Indeterminate? Admiral Kess rose from her heated platform, her powerful frame towering over the other delegates. We cannot base policy decisions on indeterminate biological readings. The human ship fired upon our vessels. She was presumably the commanding officer. Whether technically alive or dead, she represents a threat to the stability of this sector. Harmonizer 7 pulsed with deep blue patterns, its translation carrying emotional undertones of distress. We cannot simply eliminate a sentient being based on the actions of their vessel. There may have been circumstances we do not understand. Perhaps their aggressive response was based on fear, miscommunication, or cultural misunderstanding. Fear, Vorth's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his species. A spacefaring civilization should have developed beyond such primitive emotional responses. If they cannot control their fear responses during diplomatic contact, they are not ready for inclusion in galactic civilization. The debate continued for another hour, with various council members presenting arguments for everything from immediate disposal of the body to conducting extensive scientific study to returning the remains to Earth as originally planned. The longer they talked, the more entrenched each position became, and the more heated the discussion grew. Dr. Nexter continued his scans throughout the debate, occasionally consulting with the ship's central computer to cross-reference the anomalous readings with anything in the vast galactic database. As the argument reached a particularly intense point between Admiral Kess and Harmonizer 7 about the nature of interspecies conflict, the scientist noticed something that made him pause. "Council members," he interrupted, his voice carrying an urgent tone that immediately commanded attention. "I'm detecting a significant change in the human's neural activity." The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned toward the containment field. The floating holographic displays around Dr. Nexter's scanner showed clearly escalating brain wave patterns, moving from the barely detectable traces they had been monitoring to something approaching normal conscious levels. "Is the containment field malfunctioning?" Thexla asked, his crystalline form shifting to project concerned patterns across his surface. "Negative," Dr. Nexter replied, his voice now carrying a note of wonder. "The containment field is functioning perfectly. The changes I'm detecting are originating from within the human's biological systems." Admiral Kess's scales bristled, a clear sign of alarm among her people. "Are you telling us this creature is somehow regenerating?" "I'm telling you that this creature's biological processes are unlike anything in our databases," the scientist replied. "Heart rate is increasing, blood oxygen levels are rising, and synaptic activity is approaching levels consistent with consciousness." The implications of this revelation sent ripples of unease through the assembled council. If the human was still alive, their entire debate about disposal of remains became moot. More concerning was the question of what to do with a potentially hostile alien who had already demonstrated a willingness to attack Confederation vessels. "Security alert," Admiral Kess commanded, activating her personal communicator. "I want armed guards in this chamber immediately." "That may not be wise," Dr. Nexter warned. "If the human is indeed regaining consciousness, the first thing she sees upon awakening should not be weapons pointed at her. We've already had one violent encounter due to miscommunication." Spinner Zalthes repositioned herself closer to the containment field, her multifaceted eyes examining the human with predatory interest. "Perhaps we should consider the possibility that humans do not experience death and recovery in the same manner as other species. There are precedents in galactic biology for species with extremely resilient survival mechanisms." "Such as?" Harmonizer 7 asked, its bioluminescent patterns shifting to curious yellows and greens. "The Thanatosian death sleepers enter a state virtually indistinguishable from death when severely injured, sometimes for decades, before recovering completely," the arachnid explained. "The cryogenic monks of Absolute Zero can survive in hard vacuum for months by shutting down all but the most essential biological functions. Perhaps humans have evolved a similar mechanism." As if responding to their discussion, the readings on Dr. Nexter's scanner spiked dramatically. The human's body, which had lain motionless for 3 days, began to show the first signs of movement. A slight twitch in the fingers, barely perceptible through the containment field, but clearly registered by the sensitive monitoring equipment. "By the 7 moons of Zephyr," Thexla whispered, his usual diplomatic composure cracking slightly. She's actually going to wake up. The council chamber erupted into chaos once again, but this time the urgency was immediate and practical rather than philosophical. Security protocols demanded they be prepared for any potential threat, but diplomatic protocols suggested they should treat a potentially living being with appropriate respect. The contradiction left everyone uncertain about how to proceed. Dr. Nexter continued monitoring the increasing biological activity while trying to maintain scientific objectivity. Respiratory rate is increasing. Muscle tension is returning to normal levels. Based on the current rate of recovery, I estimate consciousness will return within the next few minutes. Admiral Kess had moved to a defensive position near the chamber's exit, her hand resting on the plasma weapon at her side. I maintain that this creature represents a clear and present danger. Her ship fired on our diplomatic convoy without warning. The fact that she somehow survived what should have been fatal injuries only makes her more dangerous, not less. Or, Harmonizer 7 countered, its patterns now displaying the rapid flickers associated with excited discovery. It makes her a remarkable example of her species' resilience. Consider what we could learn about human biology, about their survival mechanisms, about their potential contributions to galactic civilization. The debate was interrupted by a more pronounced movement from the human. Her head turned slightly to one side, and her breathing became more regular and pronounced. Several council members instinctively moved back from the containment field, while others leaned forward with curiosity. Dr. Nexter made several rapid adjustments to his scanning equipment. Neural activity is now within normal parameters for a conscious being. Adrenaline levels are spiking, which suggests she may be aware of her surroundings even if not yet fully conscious. "Can she hear us?" Vorth asked, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Unknown. Human auditory capabilities are within the normal galactic range, so it's possible she's been aware of our discussion for some time." This possibility sent another wave of discomfort through the council. If the human had been listening to their debate about what to do with her presumed corpse, her reaction upon full awakening might be even more hostile than expected. Thexla stepped forward, assuming his role as senior diplomat. "If she can hear us, perhaps we should address her directly. Let her know she's safe and that we mean no harm." After we debated the disposal of her body for 2 hours, Admiral Kess's tone carried heavy skepticism. "I doubt she'll view us as benevolent rescuers." The human's breathing became more pronounced, and her lips moved slightly, though no sound emerged. Dr. Nexter's scanner registered rapid eye movement beneath closed lids, suggesting she was entering the final stages of regaining consciousness. "Whatever we decide to do, we need to decide quickly," the scientist warned. "Full consciousness is imminent." The 12 representatives of the Galactic Confederation found themselves facing a situation none of their diplomatic training had prepared them for. How to explain to a supposedly dead alien that they had just spent hours debating what to do with her corpse, and somehow make that conversation lead to peaceful interspecies relations? As they watched in fascination and growing apprehension, Captain Sarah Chen's eyes began to flutter open, and the real challenge of first contact was about to begin. Captain Sarah Chen's consciousness returned like a tide rushing back to shore, carrying with it a flood of fragmented memories and sensations. Pain, the screaming of metal under stress, the flash of energy weapons, and then nothing. Now there were voices, strange and melodic, speaking in languages she didn't recognize but somehow understood. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the soft blue glow that surrounded her. The first thing she noticed was that she was floating, suspended in some kind of energy field. The second thing she noticed was the circle of alien beings staring at her with expressions that ranged from scientific curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. As a captain in the Earth Defense Corps, she had undergone extensive preparation for first contact scenarios, though none of the simulations had prepared her for waking up as what was apparently a prisoner or specimen. She remained still, assessing the situation while keeping her breathing steady and her expression neutral. The beings around her were unlike anything in Earth's xenobiology databases. A tall, crystalline figure that seemed to be made of living gemstone. A creature that looked like a massive spider, its 8 legs positioning it with predatory grace. Something that resembled a floating jellyfish, pulsing with colored lights. Others that defied easy description, each clearly representing a different evolutionary path. "She's fully conscious now," the gray, elongated figure with the large, dark eyes was saying, studying a device that hummed with energy. "All biological functions have returned to baseline normal parameters." The crystalline being stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that resonated through the chamber. "Captain Chen of the Earth vessel Defiance, I am Ambassador Thexla of the Zephyrian Confederation. You are aboard our flagship Eternal Wisdom. Do you understand me?" Sarah's mind raced. They knew her name and her ship. They had translation technology that allowed her to understand them perfectly, and they had called this a confederation, suggesting a multi-species alliance. The strategic implications were staggering. "I understand you," she replied carefully, her voice carrying clearly through whatever was translating her words. "How long have I been unconscious?" 3 days, the scientist replied. "We were uncertain about your condition." "Uncertain?" Sarah's tone remained level, but she caught the implication. "You thought I was dead." An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. The reptilian figure near the exit, whose scales were bristled in what Sarah's xenobiology training suggested was an aggressive posture, spoke with obvious hostility. "Your vessel fired upon our diplomatic convoy without provocation. We recovered your body from the wreckage and assumed you had perished in the attack." Sarah's memory of the events crystallized with startling clarity. The sudden appearance of unknown ships in Earth's outer system. The automatic defense protocols that had engaged when the aliens approached without responding to communication attempts. The brief but devastating exchange of weapons fire that had crippled her ship. "Our communication systems were jammed," Sarah said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "Your ships appeared in our space without warning, blocked our attempts to contact Earth Command, and approached in an attack formation. My crew followed standard defensive protocols." "Attack formation?" The spider-like being's voice carried what sounded like genuine confusion. "We approached in standard diplomatic configuration, with shields down and weapons powered but not targeted. From our perspective, 12 unknown vessels appearing simultaneously and jamming communications, while approaching in a wall formation looked like the opening move of an invasion," Sarah explained. "My crew had no way of knowing your intentions were peaceful." Dr. Nexter consulted his scanner and looked up with interest. "Fascinating. This suggests a significant difference in tactical interpretation between our species. What we consider a respectful diplomatic approach, humans perceived as threatening." The floating jellyfish-like creature pulsed with rapidly changing colors as it spoke. "This is precisely the kind of cultural misunderstanding that first contact protocols are designed to prevent. Neither species was acting with malicious intent." "Intent matters less than results," the reptilian figure growled. "Her ship destroyed one of our escort vessels and damaged 2 others before we could disable her weapons. 300 beings were killed in that attack." Sarah felt the weight of that revelation like a physical blow. 300 deaths because of a misunderstanding. She had been trained to protect Earth at all costs, but the cost of that protection had been far higher than anyone could have anticipated. "I'm sorry for your losses," she said, and meant it. "My crew and I responded to what we perceived as an immediate threat to our homeworld. We never intended to harm peaceful explorers." "Your apology doesn't resurrect the dead," the reptilian replied coldly. The crystalline ambassador gestured for calm. "Admiral Kess, while your anger is understandable, we must focus on preventing future misunderstandings rather than dwelling on past tragedies." Sarah studied the dynamics of the group around her. It was clear that these beings represented different species with different viewpoints on how to handle her situation. Some seemed genuinely interested in peaceful resolution, while others viewed her as a continuing threat. "If I may ask," she said, "what happened to my crew?" Another uncomfortable silence. Dr. Nexter consulted his scanner before answering. "You were the only survivor we were able to recover. The life support systems in most sections of your vessel failed too rapidly for rescue operations." The news hit Sarah like a plasma bolt to the chest. Her crew of 47, men and women she had served with for years, were dead. The responsibility for their deaths, and for the deaths of the aliens her ship had killed, settled on her shoulders with crushing weight. "I see," was all she managed to say, though the translation system somehow conveyed the grief and guilt in those 2 simple words. The insectoid representative clicked its mandibles in what might have been sympathy. The loss of one's hive mates is the greatest sorrow any sentient being can endure. You have our condolences. The question now, Admiral Kess interjected, is what we do going forward. This human has demonstrated that her species is both resilient and dangerous. Do we risk returning her to Earth and potentially enable them to improve their weapons technology based on what she's observed here? Do we keep her prisoner and risk creating an interstellar incident, the spider-like being countered? If humans are as protective of their own as most species, they will not accept the permanent loss of one of their own without retaliation. Sarah listened to this debate with growing understanding of her precarious position. She was simultaneously a prisoner, a diplomatic liability, a source of valuable intelligence, and a potential catalyst for war between Earth and this confederation of alien species. "May I make a suggestion?" she asked. The chamber fell silent, all attention focused on her. "You're debating my fate as if I'm a piece of cargo to be disposed of or returned," Sarah continued. "But I'm a representative of my species, just as you are representatives of yours. Why not treat this as what it was always supposed to be, first contact between Earth and the galactic community?" Dr. Nexter's large eyes seemed to brighten with interest. "Explain." "The tragic events of our first meeting were the result of misunderstanding and fear," Sarah said. "Both sides acted according to their training and cultural expectations. Both sides suffered losses. But we're here now, talking, understanding each other. That has to count for something." "She makes a compelling point," the jellyfish-like being said, its colors shifting to warm yellows and oranges. "Perhaps this tragedy can still serve as the foundation for peaceful relations." Admiral Kess's scales bristled further. "Peaceful relations? Her people's first action was to shoot at us. And your people's first action was to jam our communications and approach in what we perceived as an attack formation," Sarah replied calmly. "Neither side was perfect in this scenario." The arachnid representative repositioned herself closer to Sarah's containment field. "Assuming we were to consider formal diplomatic contact with your species, what assurances could you provide that future encounters would not result in similar violence?" "I can't speak for all of humanity," Sarah admitted. "But I can tell you that we're not inherently warlike. We're cautious, protective of our territory and our people, and we respond strongly to perceived threats. But we're also capable of reason, cooperation, and learning from our mistakes." "Interesting," Dr. Nexter mused. "These characteristics are consistent with many successful spacefaring civilizations. The aggression could be channeled into positive directions with proper cultural exchange. Or it could make them more dangerous as they learn more about galactic civilization," Admiral Kess warned. Thexla stepped forward, his crystalline form shifting to display complex patterns that Sarah somehow sensed indicated deep thought. "Captain Chen, if we were to consider returning you to Earth as an ambassador rather than a prisoner, what would you propose as next steps?" Sarah considered carefully. This was the moment that could determine the future relationship between Earth and the galactic community. Everything depended on her next words. "Full diplomatic protocols," she said. "Advance communication before any ships enter either party's space. Cultural exchange programs to help both sides understand each other's customs and communication styles. Joint investigations into the incident that brought us together, with representatives from both sides working to develop protocols that prevent future misunderstandings." "And if your government refuses these terms?" Admiral Kess asked. "If they view our presence as a threat to be eliminated?" "Then you'll be dealing with someone other than me," Sarah replied honestly. "I can only speak for my own commitment to peaceful resolution, but I believe most humans, when presented with the opportunity to join a galactic community rather than face it as enemies, will choose cooperation over conflict." The 12 alien representatives exchanged glances, and Sarah could sense rapid subvocal communications occurring between them in frequencies beyond human hearing. Whatever they were discussing, it was clearly intense and urgent. "There is another factor to consider," Dr. Nexter said suddenly. "Captain Chen's remarkable recovery from what appeared to be fatal injuries suggests that humans may possess survival capabilities that could be valuable to the Confederation. If her species has developed natural resistance to trauma, radiation, or other hostile conditions." "You want to study us?" Sarah said. It wasn't a question. "We want to understand you," the scientist corrected. Every species in the Confederation has contributed unique capabilities to our collective knowledge. Zephyrians contribute dimensional mathematics, Chitarans provide hive-mind computational networks, Draconians offer military strategic thinking, and so on. If humans have unusual survival capabilities. That's a conversation for formal diplomatic channels, Sarah interrupted. I won't discuss the biological capabilities of my species while I'm a prisoner in a containment field. Admiral Kess's laugh was a harsh, guttural sound. She negotiates from a position of weakness as if she holds all the advantages, either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. Or remarkably human, Sarah replied with a slight smile. We tend to be stubborn when we believe we're right. The spider-like being made a sound that the translator rendered as amusement. I find myself curious about this species. Their approach to diplomacy is unique. All the more reason to proceed carefully, Admiral Kess warned. Unpredictable allies can be more dangerous than predictable enemies. Thexla raised one of his forearms for attention. We will need to put this matter to a formal vote. Captain Chen, you should know that whatever we decide here will determine not only your immediate fate, but the future relationship between Earth and the 12 species represented in this chamber. Sarah nodded. I understand. I also hope you understand that how you treat Earth's first ambassador to your confederation will be remembered by my people for generations to come. Is that a threat? Admiral Kess demanded. It's a fact, Sarah replied calmly. Just as how my crew responded to your approach was based on our historical experience with the unknown, every interaction shapes future expectations. As the debate continued around her, Sarah found herself studying each of the alien representatives, trying to understand their motivations and concerns. The scientist was clearly interested in the biological puzzle she represented. The diplomat wanted to find a peaceful solution that would benefit everyone. The military commander saw her as a threat to be contained or eliminated. Others seemed to fall somewhere along that spectrum of opinions. What none of them seemed to fully grasp was that Sarah Chen, captain of a destroyed Earth vessel and sole survivor of humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, was no longer just fighting for her own survival. She was fighting for the future of every human who would come after her. And as the aliens prepared to vote on her fate, Sarah began planning for every possible outcome of their decision. The formal vote was scheduled for the next galactic day, giving each representative time to consult with their respective governments via quantum entanglement communication arrays. During this period, Captain Sarah Chen found herself transferred to more comfortable quarters, though she remained under constant surveillance, and her movements were restricted to a single section of the ship. Dr. Nexter had requested permission to conduct additional medical scans to better understand her species' remarkable recovery abilities, and Sarah had agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to demonstrate human cooperation and gather intelligence about Confederation technology. The examination revealed several shocking discoveries that would ultimately change the course of the debate about Earth's future. Impossible, Dr. Nexter muttered for the third time as he studied the readings from his most advanced scanning equipment. Computer, run a complete diagnostic on all medical sensors. All sensors are functioning within normal parameters. The ship's artificial intelligence replied in a voice that somehow managed to sound bored. Sarah, lying on what appeared to be a medical table made of some form of adaptive metal that adjusted to her body's contours, watched the scientist's growing excitement with amusement. What's impossible? Your cellular structure, he replied, his large dark eyes fixed on the holographic displays floating around them. When we first scanned your body 3 days ago, we detected extensive trauma consistent with exposure to hard vacuum, plasma weapons discharge, and severe impact damage, injuries that would be fatal to any known species. And now I can find no trace of that damage. None. Your body has completely regenerated tissue that was destroyed, rebuilt organs that were severely damaged, and restored cellular integrity throughout your entire system. He paused, studying her with scientific fascination. Captain Chen, how do you feel? Sarah considered the question carefully. She had expected to feel weak after such an ordeal, but the truth was that she felt remarkably good. Strong, alert, and somehow more vital than she had before the incident. I feel fine. Better than fine, actually. That's what concerns me, Dr. Nexter said. According to these scans, your physical condition is superior to the baseline measurements we took when you were first brought aboard. Your muscle density has increased by 12%, your bone structure has become significantly stronger, and your neural pathways are showing enhanced connectivity patterns. The implications of this hit Sarah immediately. You're saying the trauma improved my physical condition. I'm saying your body used the trauma as a catalyst for enhancement, the scientist replied. It's as if your species has evolved the ability to become stronger through surviving serious injury. This is unprecedented in galactic biology. The door to the medical bay slid open, and Ambassador Thexla entered, his crystalline form reflecting the soft lights of the medical equipment in complex patterns. Dr. Nexter, I trust your examination has been enlightening. Enlightening and disturbing, the scientist replied. Ambassador, I need to speak with you privately about the implications of these findings. Sarah sat up on the examination table. If this is about me, I'd prefer to be part of the conversation. Thexla considered this for a moment, then gestured for both of them to join him at a secure communication terminal in the corner of the bay. Very well. Dr. Nexter, please share your findings. The human's recovery capabilities exceed anything in our databases, the scientist began. But more concerning is what that recovery suggests about their evolutionary history. These regenerative abilities don't develop naturally unless a species has faced significant environmental pressures over many millennia. Meaning what exactly? Thexla asked. Meaning humanity has survived something that would have destroyed most spacefaring species, Dr. Nexter replied. The level of adaptation I'm seeing suggests they've endured repeated catastrophes, possibly spanning millions of years, and each time they've emerged stronger. Sarah thought about Earth's history, the ice ages, volcanic winter events, asteroid impacts, and countless other disasters that had shaped human evolution. Earth has never been a gentle world, she admitted. We've always had to fight to survive. That's precisely what concerns me, Dr. Nexter said. Most species that develop spaceflight do so because their homeworld provides stable conditions for technological advancement. Species that evolve on harsh worlds typically develop survival traits that make them problematic for galactic civilization. Problematic how? Sarah asked, though she was beginning to suspect where this conversation was leading. Aggressive expansion, resource competition, territorial conflicts, Thexla explained. The last species we encountered with similar adaptive capabilities was the Krill hegemony. They nearly destroyed half the galaxy before we were able to contain them. Contain them? Sarah's voice carried a dangerous edge. The Krill homeworld is quarantined, Thexla admitted. They were offered membership in the Confederation, but their response to peaceful contact was immediate military expansion to acquire what they called strategic resources from neighboring systems. The resulting war lasted 300 years. Sarah stood, her movements causing the medical sensors around her to register elevated stress indicators. Let me understand this correctly. You're considering quarantining Earth because we have the biological capability to survive harsh conditions. We're considering all options, Thexla replied diplomatically. The safety of the Confederation must be our primary concern. The safety of the Confederation? Sarah's training had taught her to remain calm under pressure, but the implications of what she was hearing were staggering. You're talking about imprisoning an entire species because you're afraid of their potential. Dr. Nexter stepped between them, his scientific objectivity providing a voice of reason. Captain Chen, you must understand our position. Every species that joins the Confederation undergoes extensive evaluation to ensure compatibility with peaceful coexistence. Your species' biological capabilities, combined with the aggressive response to first contact, raise significant concerns. Our aggressive response was a misunderstanding, Sarah protested. And our biological capabilities could be beneficial to your Confederation. You said yourself that every species contributes unique abilities. They do, Thexla agreed. But some abilities are too dangerous to risk integrating into galactic civilization. Sarah realized that her personal fate was becoming irrelevant. The alien Confederation was seriously considering quarantining Earth, trapping humanity in their own solar system forever. The weight of representing her entire species pressed down on her with crushing force. What would it take to prove that humanity can be trusted? She asked. That's what we're trying to determine, Thexla replied. The vote tomorrow will not just decide your personal fate, but whether Earth will be offered provisional membership in the Confederation, placed under observation, or quarantined, Sarah finished. The decision will be based on multiple factors, Dr. Nexter said. Your species' biological capabilities, your response to first contact, your technological level, and your cultural compatibility with existing Confederation members. Sarah understood that she was facing the most important negotiation in human history, and she was completely unprepared for it. Her training had prepared her to defend Earth from attack, not to argue for humanity's right to join galactic civilization. Dr. Nexter, you said my body used trauma as a catalyst for enhancement, she said, an idea beginning to form. What if that's exactly what humanity needs? What if we're designed to become stronger through challenge rather than in spite of it? The scientist's large eyes showed interest. Explain. Every major advancement in human civilization has come through overcoming adversity, Sarah said. We developed agriculture to survive famine, medicine to overcome disease, technology to master our environment. We don't just survive challenges, we use them to become better than we were before. An interesting perspective, Thexla mused. But how does this address the concern that humans might use their capabilities aggressively? Because aggression for its own sake isn't survival, Sarah replied. True survival requires cooperation, adaptation, and growth. Yes, we fought during first contact, but look at what happened afterward. We're talking, learning, finding common ground. That's what humans do when given the chance. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Thexla's communication device. The crystalline ambassador accepted the incoming message, and his faceted features shifted to display patterns that Sarah had learned indicated distress. What is it? Dr. Nexter asked. A message from the Confederation Intelligence Division, Thexla replied grimly. They've detected significant military activity in the Earth system, multiple vessels launching from your homeworld, armed and heading toward our current position. Sarah felt her heart sink. How many ships? 17 vessels, classification unknown, estimated arrival in 6 standard days, Thexla replied. It appears your people have interpreted your disappearance as an act of war. Or rescue, Sarah said quietly. They're coming to get me back. Armed rescue missions are considered acts of aggression under galactic law, Thexla warned. If Earth vessels fire upon Confederation ships, then you'll have the excuse you need to quarantine Earth permanently, Sarah finished, understanding the true scope of the disaster unfolding around her. This changes everything, Dr. Nexter said. The Council will interpret this as confirmation that humans are inherently aggressive. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of the 17 ships racing toward what their crews believed was an alien fleet holding their captain prisoner. They would be prepared for war, expecting the worst, ready to fight for her freedom even if it meant starting an interstellar conflict. I need to contact Earth, she said. If I can speak to them directly, explain the situation. Impossible, Thexla replied. Quantum entanglement communication with Earth would require specialized equipment that we don't have aboard this vessel. The communication delay through conventional means would be too great to prevent the approaching conflict. Then we need to meet them before they reach this position, Sarah said. I need to be there when first contact happens again to prevent another misunderstanding. You're asking us to trust you to prevent your own people from attacking us, Thexla observed. I'm asking you to give diplomacy a chance, Sarah replied. If those ships reach this fleet and find alien vessels surrounding their missing captain, they're going to assume the worst. But if they see me, alive and unharmed, speaking for peaceful contact. It's a significant risk, Dr. Nexter warned. If your people choose violence despite your presence, then you'll know for certain that humanity can't be trusted, Sarah said. But if they choose peace, if we can turn this crisis into an opportunity for real diplomatic contact, then you'll know that humans can learn from their mistakes. Thexla studied her for a long moment, his crystalline form cycling through patterns of deep consideration. You would bet your species' entire future on your ability to convince your own people to choose peace over war. I'd bet my species' future on their ability to make the right choice when given accurate information and real alternatives, Sarah corrected. Humans aren't monsters, Ambassador. We're just afraid of the unknown. Help me give them a reason to stop being afraid. The decision that followed would echo through galactic history for millennia to come. As Thexla activated his emergency communication array to contact the Confederation Council, Sarah prepared to face the greatest challenge of her career, convincing two different species, separated by biology, culture, and recent tragedy, that their future lay in cooperation rather than conflict. The 17 Earth vessels racing toward them represented humanity's courage, determination, and willingness to risk everything for their own. Whether those same qualities could be channeled toward building bridges instead of burning them down would determine the fate of both civilizations. In 6 days, Captain Sarah Chen would discover whether humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to abandon one of their own, would prove to be their salvation or their doom.